At Cambridge Trust, we believe that living well is about more than just managing your wealth. It's about staying intrigued, informed, and inspired. I'm Michael Duca, Executive Vice President at Cambridge Trust Company, and this is the Cambridge Trust Thought Series.
I think it's important to understand that we're at a moment in time in history, for the first time in human history, where the amount of information that we're producing has outstripped the ability for humans to consume it. That's a pretty momentous occasion. Now, we could stop producing the information, or we could create new tools to deal with the information. And IBM Watson is really the first generation of a new set of tools that are going to enable us to understand the information as a society that we're creating and use it in new ways to start to change how systems around us actually work, from healthcare to law to consumer products. It's a whole new set of capabilities that are going to change the way humans partner with machines to solve problems that they couldn't solve on their own. When we introduced the world to Watson on the Jeopardy show back in 2011, we helped the world understand that a new class of systems are going to start to emerge that we could converse with in natural language. We could ask questions and we could get answers that we understood. We would ask a question and we wouldn't get a list of 4 million documents back to read. We'd get an answer that made sense for the question we asked. As we've started to progress the technology, we've started to understand that the technology itself is really much more powerful than simply the ability to ask questions and get answers. It's really enabling us to read and understand massive amounts of information so that we can start to discover new patterns. We can create new items. We've introduced Watson to the world of cooking with Chef Watson, creating new dishes, new recipes based on ideas, patterns, but also the unique tastes of human psychology and the way that we think about food and what we think might please us at a point in time. All of these are taken into account in how these new systems can discover and use information to change the way we live. After the Jeopardy match, we started to get phone calls from an unusual contingent, right? It wasn't the first set of calls we expected, and that was from doctors. And doctors had noticed something during the Jeopardy match that most of us had missed. The doctors saw something in there that had nothing to do with the game show. What they saw was the little box at the bottom of the screen that showed the top 3 answers and ranked them by confidence. Now, what the doctors wanted to know was, how many answers were there? Right, was it just those 3 or was there a longer list? And we told them it was actually thousands and they're really rank ordered and that's the way the system really works. That intrigued them. Their second question was actually quite simple, which is, how do we calculate the confidence levels? And we said, well, we use evidence. Now, why this was important to doctors was because that's what they do every day. They use evidence to generate hypotheses or lists of things that could be wrong with a patient. Now, in a world where we're generating 700,000 new medical reference documents every single year, doctors have a problem. We've reached a point where the amount of information being produced has outstripped their ability to actually use it. Doctors go to bed at night often wondering if they knew a little bit more, would they have been able to help that patient a little bit better, right? And so the idea of creating a system that can constantly read and learn all of the things that are being generated by medical science gave them hope, gave them a light at the end of the tunnel that made them realize that this new technology could actually become a colleague, something that is constantly staying abreast of everything going on in their industry, in their profession, that they could consult just like they would consult a learned colleague. That was fascinating. And so healthcare became one of the first industries that really jumped on the bandwagon and said, this idea of systems that understand natural language, generate hypotheses, and continuously learn could be something that could really help us not just transform healthcare, but actually keep up with medical science at the same time. And that was a fascinating observation. As we studied healthcare, and we've been at it for about 3 years now, working with doctors on their problems, we started out looking at the knowledge side. of healthcare, really looking at all of the documentation that's been produced, the reference materials, the updated clinical trials, the new drugs that are coming out, really dealing with an accumulated set of knowledge and best practices around the profession of medicine. But we realized very quickly that to get the full picture, we had to start looking at not only the information about medicine, but the information about the patient. Right? So we've started to look at this idea of real-world evidence, the data that is about me as a patient that's being collected in these electronic medical record systems, that's being collected into clouds that are used by pharmaceutical companies to develop new drugs or research new therapies for chronically ill patients. So we started to realize this and said, you know, if we could create a system that brought together real-world evidence and all of the data associated with that evidence with the accumulated knowledge of medicine, we could create a whole new class of applications that really started to accelerate the pace that we can adopt new treatments, new therapies in the market. So we launched something called Watson Health. It's a new unit. We just launched it last month. It's going to be headquartered here in Boston, which is really the home of a lot of the largest pharmaceutical companies and research universities in the world. So locating it here in the midst of all of that seems like the best place for us to do that. As we started to think about how we were going to take Watson to market and commercialize our invention, it became clear to us that we really needed to look in the mirror, right? When we look in the mirror, IBM is a business-to-business company. We work with big enterprises, organizations around the world, helping them solve some of the world's most complex problems. But as we thought about the technology itself, we realized that there was going to be many, many consumer applications of this technology. And that's not something we were going to be able to deal with ourselves. So it became very clear to us very early that we needed to turn Watson into a platform for entrepreneurs, for startups, for application developers, to build applications for all walks of life. Over the last year, since we've made this capability available, we've had hundreds of different application partners, ISVs, that have started to build applications on top of the platform. We have tens of thousands of developers building new applications in our ecosystem development program. It's a tremendous new set of capabilities, and we're going to start to see Watson come to market in many walks of life. And you'll see this, you'll know it's Watson under the covers, and you'll see a label that says powered by IBM Watson, along with the brand of the company bringing it to market. I think to bring this back to the beginning, as I look at the future of these technologies, you know, I think healthcare for me is the biggest implication, right? I think that healthcare is a crisis. It's a global crisis. It's not just a U.S. crisis. I think we're on the cusp of curing diseases, not just treating them. I think the answers to many of those diseases is in the data. I think we need new tools to find those answers. I think tools like Watson are going to enable us to put together the information, aggregate it, contrast it with individual patient information, and then use that information to treat patients faster and perhaps even find the cures to some of those chronic diseases.
Thank you for joining us for this presentation of the Cambridge Trust Thought Series. For more Thought Series events, podcasts, articles, and videos, please visit cambridgetrust.com.